Hi everybody, welcome back to the broadcast studio here at World Procurement Congress powered by SAP Ariba. And right now I'm joined by Dan from American Airlines, I'm joined by Andrea from SAP, and we're going to talk some things about procurement and maybe some things about supply chain and transparency and stuff. So Dan, let me start with you. You know, traditionally one of procurement's primary concerns is cost management. It's normally at the top, right, in all of the research pieces that we see. In The Economist this year, it's actually third as a strategic priority. I think also, though, there's been lots of turbulence as well, and lots of changes. How do you think strategies have been impacted by all these turbulences, and what do you think this means for balancing cost imperatives, supplier relationship imperatives, and broader risk management?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I think cost management has always been at or near the core for procurement, and I think it always will be. It's always going to be in that top three. Yeah. It always has been for me. When I look at the evolution of how that's evolved the past few years with all the turbulence that we've had in supply chains in particular, I would say in the past, companies were mostly focused on maximizing competition. Let's get multiple suppliers for everything we need to buy, pit them against each other, drive to the lowest possible cost, right? And that strategy is still relevant today, but I think we've learned a lot through the last few years and all of the challenges that we faced. That there's a lot more value in partnerships, right? So partnering with suppliers to drive innovation on many different aspects, including costs, right? To work together. Maybe it's a heavier lift, maybe it takes a longer time to unlock that pot of gold, but I think we've learned that, you know, just pitting suppliers against each other, just maximizing competition will only get you so far, and it won't get you an advantage over your competitors. But if we can partner with our suppliers in a better way than our competitors are, focus on how we can work together collaboratively to drive costs down, you can create an actual long-term advantage.
So kind of driving towards that customer of choice perspective.
Exactly.
and
yeah.
Innovate to maybe remove cost and maybe share cost as opposed to
of course.
Reduce your price.
Yes.
Which is possibly the two. So that's interesting to see, and hopefully, and I agree with you, I don't see procurement ever getting rid of, nor in my head should we get rid of cost management, but it's, for me, it's cost as opposed to price, and recognizing the impacts of things that we do, which I think is interesting.
To me, I had a boss once that said, cost reduction for procurement, that's just what you do. That's like breathing to you. Yeah. You need that to survive, yeah. Right? Everything else comes on top.
My old boss used to say, cost is the day job. That's the day job, that we can actually do the same thing, same kind of things, which is good. So, Andrea, let me bring you in here and try and understand, you know, from what Dan was saying, what are we seeing from our customers in terms of embracing technology to achieve some of the objectives that we talk around, balancing, you know, cost and driving cost savings and cost management whilst building supplier relationships at the same time?
Yeah, as you both said, cost sensitivity will never go away from procurement. It's just baked into the mindset. You don't want to be expensive, right? It's one KPI. And this is basically also the bread and butter for every procurement solution that is being built. The solution shall help you to drive better cost efficiency. And this can be very easy, understanding from historical data how should I run this sourcing event? Should I do multi-round, single round? Is there any, does the data give me some insights that I could go and try to find a better price point? This is the one aspect. But the other aspect that you also brought up is the relationship with our suppliers. And also here, a software can basically bring a lot of value on the positive and on the challenging side. For example, if a supplier suddenly receives a lower risk rating, so there is anything with that supplier, such as something about fraud, and it's in your data, and you proactively get informed about this, you have the opportunity as sourcer to directly react and stop collaborating with that supplier for your upcoming sourcing events, even blocking that supplier physically so that all your team won't work with this supplier for now. But also, as said, on the positive side, working with suppliers in a eye-to-eye business, sharing your objectives, sharing your strategy as much as you want to share publicly, to give suppliers a fair share of information to know what they can achieve together in that collaboration. And one example, just one of the recent crises, when it gets low on particular resources, suppliers will always prefer those buyers who were trading them well and where they know what they're up to, versus those who were only putting the price pressure on them.
I think it's all right, the customer of choice thing, and there's lots of ways I think to collaborate. Taking duplication out for suppliers, I think, is something that is really important. They don't want to keep having to do the same thing time and time again. I think that's essential. And you were talking there a little bit about collaboration. Let's evolve the conversation around sort of internal collaboration. So I mentioned the Economist Impact Study. And so we do this every 2,300 responses, which is a pretty big procurement study, really. And what it found was, it said that procurement insights were essential for organizational success. The C-suite, CFOs, COOs found the insights that procurement delivered were essential for business. But the way that procurement collaborated was below where they would necessarily want it to be in last year's study. In this year's study, both the insights numbers gone up and the collaboration has jumped like 20 to 25%. So my question to you is, what gives? What's happened? What's been happening, do you think, in the broader procurement community around how are we collaborating better, and what other things can we do to keep doing that collaboration?
I have some thoughts about that. It's not a scientific study by any means, but I think kind of coming back to what we were discussing earlier about all the supply chain disruptions that had happened in recent years. A lot of that has settled down now, right? So there's one aspect is we have more time, I think, in procurement now to focus on our internal stakeholders, right? And to drive the level of collaboration up. So I think there's a basic factor of bandwidth is probably one of the factors. Another one is, a lot of us have been at this quite a long time. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit is gone, right? We want to continue to drive improvement, whether in quality, in service, and in cost. We have to do more of the heavier lifting, which requires a better understanding of what our stakeholders need, what the businesses need, right? So a higher level of collaboration with business leaders to understand better how procurement and suppliers can work together with them to create value. I think that's probably another aspect. And I think we're getting better at that too, I think this whole thing is kind of building on itself, where we start with something very basic, negotiate with suppliers, create competition, get good deals. We start to do things a little bit more complex, like collaborating with suppliers to find new creative ways of developing new technologies or driving costs down. And now I think we're recognizing if we work more closely with our stakeholders, understand better what they're trying to accomplish in their business, understand better their strategies for driving the business forward, and even challenging sometimes with our own perspectives from the outside, suppliers looking in, we can provide a higher level of support. And I think procurement teams as well as business leaders are recognizing that more and more as time goes on.
I think we're getting more closely aligned with the business. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing you saying there, that alignment. And I'll refer to a key issues study that we're all aware of. Its alignment with the business has been, I think, the only one that's been in the top 4 or 5 key priorities in that report, pretty much since its inception, needing to drive greater alignment. And we can see that the collaboration piece and alignment is clearly there. Andrea, let me ask you here around the study. We talked about these insights being essential, and whilst this year's study identified that the collaboration number was up, there was a delta in terms of when it comes to effectively applying some of those insights, how well procurement insights are being applied by organizations. What do you think organizations can do more broadly? What are you hearing from our customer base around how well do they kind of apply that? What are they trying to do to make it better?
Yeah, so I think that is twofold. So one big topic is, of course, the reliability of the data that is being used to gain these insights. So those companies who are very well and mature in maintaining their data, having a full trust into their historical data and having a very clean data. So these insights will also be easy to consume to the professionals and the business users because they will make sense out of that data easily because it fits together with what they would have expected. So this is the one very important side that companies shall need to look into. The second thing is a more softer thing, and that is change. When we look at organizations, it's always easy to say organization and then just dehumanize it. But organizations, these are human beings. And even if you have and especially when you look into generative AI, there are some insights that might be surprising even to the most professional person doing that job for 40 years already. There might be insights, they feel surprised. And it takes time for human beings to adapt to such a change, to adapt to that there is now a software that provides me with recommendations, and I then also apply these recommendations right away. Human beings are trained, and this is also very natural, and we shouldn't lose that, to question data that is being presented. So even if a company has the most perfect historical data and gives the software the chance to give the most brilliant recommendations to their users, I personally strongly believe, that it requires either longer time for people to actually start trusting that data, and that is a very, in my opinion, very big chance for companies drive active change management with their organizations. Being trained on, hey, this is what happens, this is the projection, and this was the projections last month, and it was 80% right, so you can start trusting it. Explaining what happens, even if they are business users and too technical details are not relevant, driving that change management and rebuild the trust or build the trust in these new technologies will close that gap in the longer run.
It's really interesting around data alone doesn't tell the story. You could have the greatest data in the world, but if someone doesn't want to change, they're not changing unless you can. I think it's more than benefit statement. It's almost taking people through the change thing, isn't it? From denial to resistance to exploration to acceptance. It's recognizing that people go through. Dan, what you're thinking around the application of some of these insights?
No, I think she makes a brilliant point that when you get an insight that doesn't register with what you were expecting, human nature is to assume that must be wrong. Yeah. Something must be wrong here, right? And I think especially with AI, we see a lot of that now. And that is definitely one of the reasons why things aren't going as fast with the adoption of things like generative AI and procurement as we might have thought it would, right? Overall with AI, on that vein, it's going to displace, a lot of people in the jobs that they're in today, right? Depending who you talk to, it may or may not create a lot of jobs. But one thing is for sure, a lot of the jobs as defined today will be totally reshaped when AI really starts to hit its stride in terms of its potential, and that's very threatening for people, right? So as leaders, how do we manage the teams through that change so we get advantage of that technology without leaving the people behind? That's a huge challenge, I think, for leaders in general.
I think I read somewhere that it won't negatively impact people who know how to work with AI, as it will that those who don't know how to work with AI. So from a people change perspective, it's critical. It's been fantastic. Dan, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll be back in the broadcast center with some more interviews later. Please stay tuned.